Welcome to the Laptop Pound Perfect Team Tutorials. Welcome back, everybody, to another tutorial OOTP 25 for Dummies version. Yes, tutorials for the new players that are just getting into the game and have a few questions, a few concerns, a few how do I do, what do I do, should I, could I, would I? Well, this tutorial series hopefully will help you along the way and guide you to some success in Perfect Team. Episode number 1 is in the archive there if you want to check it out. It is the bronze tournament build. Yes, I put together a kind of a meta, kind of the best cards in bronze at that time. And if you want to try and, earn some packs in tournaments, it's been, successful in earning some packs without the special combinator cards. And if you don't know what a combinator card is, well, at the beginning of that episode, I explained combinators. So there you go. This episode here is going to focus on a tutorial explaining the different eras and how to draft in Perfect Team for those specific eras. So welcome all in, everyone. Again, if you're new to Out of the Park Developments, you can go and purchase the game. And believe me, if you love baseball, if you love simulation, if you love statistics, and if you love head-to-head competition, you want to pick up this game, OOTP 25. Again, I'll leave the link to it in the description box below. This is the Canadian prices because I'm Canadian A. But if you do want to kind of convert it to any other cost, you can go and click on the little icon there that has the pull down menu for all the different places around the world. Of course, many of you may be watching from the United States. It is $49.99. If you use the discount code Laptop Pound, all capital letters, this should work. Again, I believe my code still works. Laptop Pound, and click apply. Let's see what that does. It gives you 10% off, so you can pick up the game for $44.99 American. Again, well worth it, well worth the value. You're going to be playing it probably for a long time. It came out at about the middle of March, and every year in March, the new version of the game comes out still. There's still a lot of gameplay value that you can get here as I record this towards the end of July. And stay tuned later on in the show. I will be giving you the skill testing question where you can win 5, 10 standard packs. Let's make it 10 standard packs for your perfect team. And who knows what you're going to pull in that pack. Will you pull a Ty Cobb? Will you pull a Joe Mauer? Maybe one of the other favorite players that you have in baseball. So stay tuned. There will be a giveaway coming up in just a bit. And some news and highlights. What's coming to Perfect Team? Well, you don't want to miss August 5th. August 5th is kind of like a refresh day. Every couple of months, OOTP refreshes their tournaments, introduces some new things into the game. And on August 5th, Monday, August 5th, there's going to be a live card update. All the live cards are going to potentially change their values from a 72 to an 84 or from an 80 to a 60, depending how the players do in real life baseball. Their card rating in the game can move up or down. Also, there'll be a new set of prizes for the tournaments. Tournament Batch 2 cards are coming out. So in Tournament Batch 1, we had a bunch of great cards, especially the perfect cards like Nomar Garciaparra. New batch will be coming out, and a tournament refresh of the dailies, the weeklies, the quicks. You're going to see a new look to those. About 30 to 40 new tournaments are going to be introduced into the game. Combi caps. Again, if you don't know what combis are, check out my first tutorial video. But basically, they're a way that you can increase the value of a current card. You can make that card better by improving it, by feeding it other cards that you own in the game. And some new perfect drafts with some completely new formats and ways that you can draft your cards. So excited, so pumped up for August the 5th. And this is only a small sampling of some of the new things coming to Perfect Team 25. Okay, as the title suggests, we're going to talk about different eras and how you need to prepare not only your traditional tournament drafts, but also your perfect drafts as well. This is a picture screenshot that you should take because believe me, it will be of immense value as you go through Perfect Team. Just like in real life baseball, your Perfect Team tournaments use the criteria, use the modifiers that existed in real life baseball back in that time period. So here you'll see 8 different eras in baseball from the early eras and the year associated with it, 1871 to 1900, all the way down to modern times, which in OOTP is considered 2005 onward. And depending on the era of your tournament, for your pitching, you need to set up your starters and your bullpens slightly different for each era. For example, in the dead ball era from 1901 to 1920, if you have a tournament between those years, you'll see on the main part here, you need 2 to 3 starting pitchers, high pitch counts for your starting pitchers because you can set those, and you are going to not require a full bullpen, maybe 4 to 5 members in the bullpen there. So again, look at the era, look at the time period, and then you can put together your pitching rotation and staff based on that era in play there. Also, thank you to Aster31 X4S and Follow Durden, who a few years ago came up with this chart, and many Perfect Team users have been using it ever since. So again, very important guide, reference, resource that you can use as you're assembling your perfect teams and you're assembling your tournament rosters. What I am going to do is I'm going to go through and draft a few teams for my perfect drafts. This applies for your tournament, your traditional tournaments too, where you can put together rosters, but you have to own the cards for the traditional tournaments. If you play Perfect Team, though, there are tournaments where you can draft from a set of cards that you don't need to own. And so that's what we're going to do in this episode here, show you kind of my strategy for different eras of tournaments. First one we're going to do is called the Friday Night Playing Guitar at an Italian Restaurant. Yes, they have some unique names, some cool names for these tournaments. This is a tournament with 128 teams. All 128 teams draft their teams from a set of pool of cards. And what you need to do anytime you go into a tournament, you need to really carefully look at what the tournament is going to be about, how many teams, when it takes place, what stadium it's in, and so on. So this tournament is set in 1919. Let's go back to our era chart. 1919 is part of the dead ball era. So for this draft, you need to have 2 to 3 starting pitchers and maybe 5 to 6 pitchers in the bullpen. You don't need a full rotation of 12 or 13 pitchers. All you will need is at maximum 8 pitchers on your staff. So on a team of 26 players, 8 pitchers means you're going to have 18 batters. So be careful how many pitchers that you draft. You don't want too many because they won't get much use in the dead ball era. Next thing we're looking at is that the designated hitter is being used. So you're going to have a DH slot. And the games are going to be played at Frontier Field. Now, Frontier Field, you'll notice this set of numbers. And the set of numbers indicate the modifiers for that stadium, whether it's a pitcher's park, a neutral park, a hitter's park. So in this case here, we've got modifiers for the hitters BABIP-wise. The first 2 numbers are BABIP. The next 2 numbers there are home runs in terms of power, doubles, and then triples. So it's a pretty neutral park because parks are gauged based on a 1.000. A 1.00 in each of these categories means it's a neutral park. Anything above one means that the hitters have an advantage. The first number listed is always the left-handed batters. The second number is the right-handed batters. So you'll see this park here doesn't really favor pitchers or hitters. It would have to be, 0.80 or it would have to be 1.1 to favor one side or the other. So it's a fairly neutral park. So when you're drafting your team, you don't have to, emphasize power. You don't have to emphasize BABIP so much because it's fairly neutral. Also, take a look at the length of the series. This is a best of 9. So you're going to have to, accommodate for that with your roster in terms of rest and things like that. If you go to the full 9 games, a few rounds in a row. And then I guess, again, the start time at the end, when the tournament's going to start, you can, once you enter the tournament, you can draft at any moment up until the start time. Don't leave it too late though, because a lot of times you're doing other things, you get distracted, you forget about it, and then it's just going to put an empty roster and you're going to lose big time 4, 5 games in a row because it won't put any cards on your team. The second key resource that you're going to want to consider anytime you're doing a perfect draft or a traditional tournament, especially those that have specific years attached to it, is you're going to want to use this baseball reference site. And I'm going to put the link for it in the description box below. This is a site that shows you year by year in Major League Baseball history, the different results for all these different batting statistics. Singles, doubles, triples, home runs, RBIs, stolen bases, etc. And you do kind of want to have an idea of what that time period was like that you're drafting for, so that when you're making the choices of your cards, you're choosing the cards that might have a better fit for that year of the draft. So the example that we're going to do again is the 1919 draft. So I'm going to go down and 1919 is selected. So we're going to select 1919 and highlight it there. And you want to compare it to the modern era draft, which again is 2010 that I have selected already. You click on show only select rows, and now they're going to put them underneath each other here at the top of your screen, which is a wonderful way to kind of compare different eras. Remember that first chart I showed you? It said that you kind of only want to have 3 starters, maybe 5 relievers. The other 18 batters are going to do better based on what it was like in 1919. Here we see the hits were pretty much the same in both eras. However, once we go a little further into it, we see there were a lot more triples in 1919, which indicates that maybe you want to choose better gap power players, players that can hit into the gap for those triples. Also, a big one is home runs. There were not a lot of home runs in 1919. Now, not saying there were no home runs, there were a few, but there were only about a fifth of the home runs that we see today in the modern era. So you don't really want to draft a lot of players with big power. Another big difference is your strikeouts. Not a lot of players struck out back then compared to today. So your avoid K is not going to be an important characteristic to look for on the card. And in terms of walks, less walks back then. So I, power, avoid K, those are really not big issues on your card. What you're going to be looking for is your BABIP, your gap power for the triples, your speed for the triples as well. Stolen bases back then were up compared to today. So again, that speed characteristic is going to play a bigger role too. So BABIP, gap power, speed, avoid K, power, and I, not as important. All right, so let's get back into our 1919 perfect draft. Here again is the main screen, the draft that we've entered. And again, you want to look at the year. You want to look at the park factors to see if they're going to sway your decision a little bit. Check to see if there's a DH. Again, there is a DH here, so you're going to have to keep that in mind when drafting. And again, you could go into some long series because these are best of 9. So we're going to enter the draft. And in the draft, you're always going to have 20 minutes, unless it's a speed draft. There are some drafts that are designated speed drafts where you might only have 5 or 10 minutes. 20 minutes should be good enough. First round, perfect round. Again, I want speed, gap power, defense, BABIP. So you take a look at the characteristics. You can open up each player profile by right-clicking on it. And then you want to look for those specific characteristics. Always nice to have players that can play more than one position. So here's a card that a lot of blue. Blue is good. Blue usually means a better card. But again, does it meet the 1919 characteristics? Well, sometimes you get the clues within the card itself. For example, this Benny Koff card is a card from 1914. I click on his real life stats. He played in 1919, and you can see how he did. He did okay, a 277 average, a 3.8 WAR. So we're drafting for 1919, and we come across a card that actually this player played in 1919. Interesting. Jack Glasscock played in that time period as well. Here's kind of the profile I want. I don't really care about power. I don't really care about walks. I want gap power, speed, defense. Yeah, this is a guy I'm going to take. Next up, this David Ortiz card. Now, you may like David Ortiz. You may say, wow, he's going to hit me a lot of home runs, Lap. He's going to take a lot of walks. Well, normally he would if it was a modern era tournament. But in 1919, we don't care about power. We don't care about walks because there weren't as many back then. We care about gap power, BABIP, speed, and defense. And David Ortiz doesn't really meet that profile, so he's not really a great choice for this time period. The Hernandez card. Again, don't care about power. Don't really care as much about eye. Eye's still important, but I'm looking for BABIP, gap power, speed, and defense. And he's kind of, we'll see what else we can find. We already have a shortstop, and this shortstop, Jack can also play second base as well, so we can move him to second if we want to. For shortstop, you're looking for range. The higher the range, the better. And you're not going to find many players higher than 108. We're probably going to keep him at short. Charlie, yeah, he doesn't have the range. He can only play short. Not a card you want to take. Doesn't really have the great criteria as well. How about Grady Sizemore in center field? Well, he's really good against the right-handed pitchers. Got speed. He's got good defense. Because we can take 18 batters, there's not a need for a ton of pitchers. This is a guy I want starting against the right-handed pitcher. So definitely he is the best choice right now. Joe Mauer, good choice, good catcher. BABIP, gap power, eye, speed's not really there. So it's probably going to be, I think we're going to go with Mauer instead because he can play against the righties and lefties. So that Mauer card looks good and the Sizemore card looks good. I do want good defense in center field. I think we're going to go with the Grady Sizemore. Tough choice, though. Again, you do kind of want to start looking for maybe one of your starting pitchers in diamond if there's one available. Otherwise, you want to grab them early on because you'll notice at the bottom here, I am only going to be offered 12 pitchers. So if you leave them too late, you may not have a full pitching staff. Now, I don't have any pitchers offered here other than a closer. And back in 1919, they didn't use closers. And I'm not going to use my pen much at all because my starters pretty much will pitch the whole game. So Dwayne Ward, not really an option here. Vlad, pretty good profile. Doesn't have the speed though. Does have a little bit of gap power, so he's a possibility. McGuire again is like that David Ortiz power eye, least important for this time period, not an option. Toby, I've already got a shortstop. Got another catcher option here. Not really exciting. And Evan Carter. Here's a guy I like. Gap power, speed, defense, BABIP. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're taking, not Charles. We're taking Evan Carter. All right. Now we're in gold. Now we want to make sure we don't pass up on any good starting pitchers. Again, I don't want to take the live players. The historical cards tend to do better. So I really only see one starting pitcher here, Dustin May. And to make sure I do get enough starters, I'm going to take him as one of my choices. Felix, some gap power, some BABIP, good defense. He's a possible choice. Again, he can play left field or center field. Grady can only play center. Evan Carter can play right. So if I do draft another left fielder, I could move him to the right field position. But for right field, you want a strong catcher or a strong arm. He doesn't have the strongest of arm. He's definitely more suited for left field. So I think I'm not going to take Felix there. I'm going to look for a better right fielder later. Jason Bay, again, like Ortiz, like McGuire, not a good option for 1919. So we're going to ignore him. So Dustin May seems to be a good choice. Jimmy Wynn, got a really good arm. Here's a guy we could move to right field, but unfortunately, again, he's a power eye guy. But at least he's a little better than those other players in gap power and BABIP. So again, he's an option if there's nothing else. Jay Payton, he can play right field. He's got a strong arm, but not the best batter. I think I like Jason Bay better. And finally, let's take a look at this catcher. Not the strongest either. So I think we're going to go with Jason Bay and Dustin May. Although I didn't look at the future legend players here. More of a power eye guy. And not really much of a batter. So I think we're going to go with Jimmy Wynn. Because I thought it was Jason Bay, but he can only play left field. I need someone that can play right field. But I'm thinking of this Arias card because he can play many positions. Got some speed, gap power. I think we're going to go with him. Yeah, not a great round, not an obvious choice round for cards, but I'm pretty happy with who we ended up getting. Again, only have 2 starting pitchers to look at here. You want to look at those first. You want the high BABIP. You want the high control. Don't really have to worry about home run suppression because there are not a lot of home runs. So Jack Powell, he's okay. He's okay. Stuff, ignore. You don't want high stuff, or I mean, not that you don't want it, but it's not as important. 2 most important things in your starting pitcher: control, pitcher BABIP. The singles, the doubles, the triples, and the control, with, of course, some stamina. So I think we are going to go with Jack Powell. Let's take a look at Julio. Good pitcher BABIP. Control's not as strong as I would want, so I'm going to avoid him. We're going to go with Jack Powell. And how about a second baseman here? You want strong defense. For second baseman, turn double play and infield range are the most important. Not the best batter, though. Charlie Keller in right field. Arm's not good enough for me. Yeah, this is a difficult one. Maybe I go with one of my relievers now, just because it's such a strong relievers against the lefties. Control's not great against the righties, though. I think I'm going to go with this guy. He's got the profile I'm looking for. Weakest in stuff, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. Weakest for stuff. So we're going to go with Mini and Jack. All right, I'm going to continue on. I'll show you what my overall roster looks like at the end of the draft. No need to go through card by card because I kind of gave you an idea of what profiles to look for your hitters, for your pitchers. So we'll see you at the end of the draft. All right, we're at the end of the draft, and the end rounds were not as good as the first few rounds, that's for sure. So some extremely tough decisions which you're going to have to make. Now you go and you set up your roster for the tournament. Again, this is 1919. That's why I only have 8 pitchers drafted. You can go anywhere from 7 to 9, and you should be fine for this tournament. If you have 9, 10, 11, 12 pitchers, it's kind of a waste of a pick because they might get a couple innings in the entire tournament because your starters typically can pitch the entire game. Now, unfortunately, OOTP doesn't allow you to set a 3-man rotation directly. So you're going to have to put it to a 4-man rotation. Choose the 3 pitchers that you want as your starters. Again, with the BABIP suppression kind of being the most important, consider that when you're choosing your 3 starters. So I'm definitely going to go with Britt Burns. I'll go with, do I want to go Dustin May? And yeah, I guess Jack Powell. So we'll go with those as the main 3. Again, I want kind of the guy with the best pitcher BABIP and control. So we got a 98.70 for Burns. Mays has a 88.80. Okay, that's pretty good. And then finally, Powell, very good in control, weak in pitcher BABIP. So I'm going to put him as my number 3. Burns is 2. May is number 1. So even though it says 4-man rotation, you can put it to 3-man rotation. And then everyone else, remember, there's no closers back then. You're not going to really need guys for long relief because your starters are going to go deep into the game. And just set them all maybe to medium rotation, middle relief. Maybe your better ones. See if there's anyone here that are really good with control pitcher BABIP, like this Gray pitcher, and maybe put him to use more often. See if there's anyone else that kind of stands out. Pitcher BABIP control. Blanco. Pitcher BABIP weak control though. So yeah, I'm going to leave everyone else as middle relief. And again, for pitch counts, 4-19-19. Remember that chart that I showed you? They can throw 160 pitches. So don't be afraid to, set your pitch counts really high. You can refer back to that chart again to take a look exactly at what pitch count should be. So I'm going to set them all to 160. Stamina wise, Dustin May might not make it. So Dustin May will drop down to 140. The lower the stamina, the lower you're going to have to kind of drop these pitch counts down. Hitting wise, now because I was able to draft so many hitters here, it's going to allow me the luxury of using platoons. By that, what I mean is certain players are better against the left-handed pitchers, and certain players are better against the right-handed pitchers. So if I open a player up like this Jay Bell, you'll see that, he's probably better against the lefties. So maybe you don't put him against the right-handed pitchers. Let's open up Mike Kingery. He's better against the right-handed pitchers. So maybe you have someone better against the lefty. So again, you can play around with it a little bit. I'm going to go and fix my lineups here, and we'll be back and I'll show you how I've set it up. All right, the lineup is set. We're ready to go. Again, my pitching rotation, which I showed you before, 3 starters, 4-man rotation, always set to start the highest rested player, and I don't want them pitching in relief. And then for the hitters, Again, you want to set them up for the most success for that time period, 1919, a lot of BABIP, a lot of speed, a lot of gap power. And as you can see, my BABIP, very strong, almost all of them green or higher against the lefties and against the righties. The defense, really strong defense as well. And same with the speed and stealing ability, all green or higher. So those are kind of the things you want to have in a 1919 draft. Now, you'll notice my versus lefties and versus righties is not identical. You should take some time to place players in the proper positions. For example, Grady Sizemore. Grady Sizemore, you'll notice that he is much, much, much better against the right-handed pitchers. So against the righties, you want him up high in the lineup, even leadoff, because he's got speed, he's got good BABIP, so he's going to get on base a lot, and you want those speedy guys at the top of the lineup that can get on base. So I've got him number one against the righties. However, against the lefties, I've got him way down here in the number 7 slot because, again, he's not as likely to get on base. So I don't want to put him in the number 1 slot where he's going to be an out more times than he is against the righties. But I still want him in there for his defense in center field. I want him catching those fly balls. So he's still in the lineup, just not as high up. I've got Kevin Youkilis in the number 4 slot because even though the home runs are down, there still are some home runs. And you'll notice that he is my best power guy against the lefties. So I've got him number 4. Against the righties, it is Grady Sizemore. So I could put Grady Sizemore there. Youkilis a little further down, but he's got better BABIP. So with the better BABIP and still pretty good home run power, I want him a little higher up than Grady Sizemore. Jay Bell is another interesting one. Jay Bell, good against the lefties, not very good against the right-handed pitchers. So against the lefties, I've got him higher up, more likely to get on base and contribute offensively. But against the righties, I've got him in the number 9 slot. I don't really have another second baseman that is good defensively and offensively. So Jay Bell gets to play both ways, but he's much further down the lineup. And I'm still going to be able to take advantage of that great defensive ability at second base. Certain players you're going to play both ways because they're just so good. Jack is going to play against the lefties and the righties. Evan Carter against the lefty and righties. But there are certain times where you're going to be able to use a player one way. If I had another good second baseman who could play against the right-handed pitchers, he would have replaced Jay Bell. When you're setting your utility positions, now again, 1919, players do not get tired as easily. So you're going to find that your starters pretty much play every game. However, this is a best of 9, so they will need some rest from time to time. When you're setting your utility, try not to at least, use any of your starters as utility 1. And with utility 1, try not to put a player in there more than twice. Now you'll notice I've got Mike Heath 3 times. So I could put in Hinton, but then I've got Hinton in twice, which works. Heath in twice, Smith in twice. Yeah, that works. So I'm going to go with that. And against the righties, let's see if there's anyone in more than 2 times. Doesn't look like it. And I don't have any of my starters in my utility 1. So that's what I'm going to use. I don't really focus much on the pinch hitters or pinch runners. The only other thing you want to make sure you do is if you go into the game strategy for one of your players, go into uncheck pinch hit if tired. Because if they're tired, you want them rested for that next game. And if they come in to pinch hit, they may not be fully rested. And that means you have to use a utility player again which you really don't want to do as much as you can avoid it. You want to avoid using utility, avoid using them. So I go in and I uncheck all the pinch hitters if tired. I would like it to be a default where it automatically does that for every player. But unfortunately, the default is checking it on. There we go. All of them are set. And the other thing I like to do for my pitchers is go into one of your pitchers, and for your three starters, May, Burns, and Powell, I like to click aggressive tiredness hook. So if they are starting to wear down, they're more likely to be taken out of the game. You don't want tired pitchers giving up hits late in the game. Could cost you some runs and it could cost you the game. So May, Powell, and Burns, aggressive tiredness hook on. Make sure you submit it every once in a while, just so that it takes. And other changes you could consider: your really speedy guys, Sizemore, Carter, Glasscock, maybe go in and crank up their running a little bit more. So we'll do that. Sizemore, we'll do the same. We're going to crank that up. And Carter, we're going to move it up. Because remember, the stolen base rate was higher in 1919. So you might as well take advantage of your speedsters. So there you go. That is what a 1919 draft will look like. And in the third tutorial, I'll let you know how I've done. All right, let's do one more draft as an example. So let me set that up and we'll be right back. All right, let's take a look at a second perfect draft here. And again, some of the strategies when you're drafting, considering the era, considering the ballpark factors. This one is from 1965. So this is the perfect draft known as the Daily Bagels and Schmear with EVC and NYC. Again, it is a daily, so it runs once per day. And again, got some pretty good prizes. You don't need to own the cards. You can just go through and draft from a pool of cards that you're given, like we saw in the first draft. This one here, again, 1965. So if we go back to our era chart and we look on the right-hand side here, 1965 falls in the baseball boom era. And in the boom era, you're required, or you should have, 5 starting pitchers. You can give them pretty high pitch counts, 160 or higher are common. And you still need a bullpen. This time recommended 5 bullpen pitchers. So last time we had 3 and 5. This time we want 5 and 5. So if you can have 10 starters, or 10 pitchers, 5 starters, 5 bullpen guys, you should be pretty set for this format. The next thing we want to look at is the ballpark factors after we look at the actual year. So again, we compare our years. We look at modern baseball, which is considered 2010 for OOTP. And then we go down to 1965. Click that one. Show both rows together. And now we can do that little bit of a comparison. So there are more hits in modern era baseball. So you won't have as many hits in 1965. And you are going to have a few more triples. And the home run rate is a little bit lower, as is the stolen base success rate. Walks are lower, strikeouts are lower, batting average is lower. So pretty much you take modern era and drop everything off just a little bit. And now is where the ballpark is going to come into play. So if we look at our ballpark factors, remember, everything above 1 favors the hitters. Everything below 1 favors the pitchers. So for BABIP, you know, your hits, your singles, your doubles, that is going to favor the pitchers. So you don't necessarily need to look for your high BABIP hitters. Home runs, though, absolutely favors your hitter. So this is what you're going to focus on. Not a lot of doubles, but there are some triples. So looking at these park factors, think about it in your own mind, first of all. What are you going to look for on the card? For me, I'm going to look for high power and eye guys. I'm going to look for guys that have some gap power and speed. And I'm going to look for pitchers that have high home run suppression to try and prevent some of these home runs. These are best of 5. And again, there is no designated hitter. So that means your pitcher is going to have to hit. So sometimes you're looking at a couple different pitchers. Are there any that are two-way players, guys that can, put the bat on the ball a little bit, so to speak? So we're playing in the Polo Grounds, favors the power hitters. All right, let's get into the actual draft, and I'll show you the kind of card I would look for this specific draft. Here we go. Again, typically most of the drafts you enter are going to be a 20-minute timeline. And here is where I'm going to give you the skill testing question. If you want a chance to win some packs for your team, all you have to do in the comment section, I want you to put down 3 things. What is your perfect team username? Not your team name, but your username. Number 2, name any one player that I drafted in this specific draft. And number 3, tell me how long you've been playing Perfect Team. Is this your first year, your second year? Let me know how long you've been playing Perfect Team. So again, what is your Perfect Team username? Name one player that I drafted in this specific draft. And what is your duration of playing Perfect Team? Okay, let's get to it. Remember, power hitters or home run suppression pitchers are the 2 key things I'm looking for. Again, I'm going to draft my team, and I'll show you what it looks like at the end of the draft. All right, the draft is done. I'll give you a little reasoning about some of the players I chose. Again, you're not always going to get the best choices in some of your rounds, so you got to take the best of what's available. And there were a couple rounds I didn't have great choices, but tried to do the best I can to meet those criteria of this draft for success. Again, as we mentioned, you want 10 pitchers, 5 starters, 5 relievers, and you're looking for pitchers with really good home run suppression. And as you can see, other than perhaps one pitcher here, all of my pitchers have really good home run suppression. Again, not the best, but again, this is the last round, an iron round. You're not always going to get the best choices. So really happy with my starting 5. Billy Swift has really good home run suppression. Again, I'm not worried about stuff in the 1960s. So ignore the stuff category, ignore the movement category. The bottom 3 are the 3 that you're focused on. You want these bottom 3 to be the highest that they can be. And even then, you want home run suppression and control to be your top 2. So Billy Swift, a really good option. I got Chris Carpenter. Again, look at that, all that blue. He should be a dominant pitcher in this draft. And Dutch Leonard, again, has the 2 most important ones I'm looking for, home run suppression and control. So really good option there. Thornton Lee is my number 4 guy. Not as strong as you've seen with some of the other pitchers, but still, he could be the number 2 or 3 pitchers on most teams, absolutely. And a number 5 guy, I was able to get the Ray Caldwell, who again has the 2 most important ones I'm looking for, home run suppression with decent control. So happy with those. Remember the pitch counts. Pitchers can pitch up to about 160 pitches back then, unless they have really low stamina. But anyone that has stamina of like 90 or higher, you can feel confident of putting that about 160. So Chris Carpenter has 91. I'm going to put him at 160. Billy Swift, he's got a stamina of 72. So I'm not going to go as high, maybe about 140 for him. Dutch Leonard, stamina of 72 as well. So we'll keep him at the same pitch count, 140. Thornton Lee, he has a stamina of 102. He absolutely can go 160. And Ray Caldwell, stamina of 79. He can come close to 160. I'm going to put him about 150. So these guys should be able to pitch at least 8 innings, maybe 9 innings. So you're not even going to see much of your bullpen. But you want to put your high leverage guys kind of in the key roles here. We didn't really have stoppers back then. So I'm going to put everyone at middle relief, except for my worst 2 pitchers here. We'll keep them at long relief and maybe some mop up. And then you want to look, okay, who is my best reliever? Well, Bob Tewksbury is pretty darn good. In many lineups, he would be a starter. But because I have 5 guys better than this, he's in my bullpen. We're going to put him as used more often. And this guy here, again, good home run suppression, not as good control. We'll leave him as regular. And we'll use this guy as regular. Okay. Something like that. Maybe have 1 or 2 guys as more higher leverage, use more often. And you're good to go. Because again, these guys are not going to pitch many innings in the entire tournament. Next up, our hitters. No DH. So your pitchers are going to hit. So again, you can kind of take a look at your pitching staff in terms of their batting ratings. Take a look who's there. Ray Caldwell is a pretty good bat, but he's my number 5 guy. So I don't really want to move him up in the lineup. I could move him up if I want to take advantage of him as a hitter as well. He's a pretty good hitter, good BABIP, good gap power. You know what? I think it might be worth moving him up in the lineup a little bit. I'm going to move him up to the number 3 slot. Yeah, take advantage of that bat. All right, let's go back to our hitters. And once I'm done putting the lineup together, I'll give you my reasoning why. All right, this is the lineup I've decided to go with. And again, this is a power park. So when I drafted my players, you'll notice that I drafted a lot of guys with power and I. Kind of don't worry about the top 3 categories here. You want to focus a lot on those bottom categories. Of course, if you can get some good BABIP as well, that's always important. But ignore avoid Ks, ignore that contact rating. You want power, I, gap power, BABIP. Those are your top 4 that you're looking for in your hitters. So again, power and I are the strongest. I've got some BABIP. I've got some gap power. Looks like a really good card. Pedro Guerrero, power, I, got some BABIP. Not as strong on gap power, a little weak there. Even for my top pick was Jackie Robinson. I mean, it's Jackie Robinson. He's well-rounded. He's got speed. He's got defense. He can give it all. There wasn't really a player that stood out for power and I. If there was, I would have taken them instead because this is a ballpark that gives up a lot of home runs and triples. He still might get me a bunch of triples with some home runs. Not my first choice if I had a better card, but a really good choice. Who else do we have? My second baseman, again, power and I with some BABIP and a little bit of gap power. Now, notice he's not as strong against the right-handed pitchers. So I definitely got him against my left-handed lineup, little bit higher than he is against the righties. Unfortunately, I don't have anyone else that can play second base that is better against the righties. Otherwise, I would throw them in. We do have the Craig Biggio, who's okay against the righties. Doesn't have that power, though. And again, in this park, I want my power guys to have priority. So again, I put my lineup. I always tend to put my best power guy in the number 4 slot, which is Jimmy Fox. So he's at the number 4. In terms of my leadoff, I like a guy that has high BABIP and has some speed. So if I look at my high BABIP and speed guys, Mo Vaughn has the BABIP, which doesn't really play in this park. So that's why he's not starting. Jackie Robinson, high BABIP. He's got speed. He's going to be my number 1 guy. My most well-rounded after that, who's got good power, good BABIP, I like them in the number 3 slot. Power, BABIP. Fernando, you're number 3. And I also like a really strong hitter that can get maybe a stolen base, maybe a home run. Larry Doby, power, good defense. Not a guy I typically would have at number 2, so let's see if we can move someone else there. Someone with good BABIP, good getting on base, some power, some maybe Pedro Guerrero, Ethan Allen, maybe. So BABIP-wise, we're looking for a strong BABIP player. Ray Boone, third base or shortstop, so he would have to go in at third, where I already have Fernando. So yeah, no one really that I can move up other than maybe Pedro. So let's do that. Let's move Pedro to where Larry is. Again, when you're putting in your backups, very, very key. Your utility 1, double check that none of your starters are in the utility 1 slot. Doesn't matter about utility 2. But utility 1, you don't want them there. And you want as much as possible not to have the same person backing up more than 2 positions. So Caldwell's at 2, Biggio's at 2. We're good there. And against the right-handed pitchers, Caldwell 2, Biggio at a couple. He's at 3 actually, so maybe we'll move him out of the catcher back up. Good. So we're good to go. We can submit. And we have a pretty dominant power lineup there. Should do pretty good. Very happy with the pitchers that we got with the home run suppression. I think this is a top 8 team in this tournament. I will let you know next video how it does. In terms of strategy, not going to go through all the sliders. That'll be a separate video where we talk just about sliders. But your basic strategy, you never want your guys to run in terms of the global strategies. And other than that, don't mess around too much with the sliders. Like I said, in a future video, I'll go through more of the slider ins and outs and what I like to do. But the most important ones is your global strategy on the left-hand side. I like my defensive subs to come in the 8th inning where we're leading by 2 or less runs. And for the 1960s, I think a 96 and a 71 are pretty good numbers to use there. Those will change depending on the era that you're playing in. Like I mentioned with the first draft that we did, go into your players. I'm going to start with my catcher. Go into their strategy and click off available as a pinch hitter if tired. Again, when you have put them on the bench because they're tired, you don't want them coming to pinch hit because they will not fully recover, which means that your worst players are going to be in the game more if these guys are not recovered after 1 day's rest. Otherwise, they should be okay when they've rested for 1 day. So just go through and click all of those off. When you set these sliders here, bench fatigue. So once one of your players is 96% or less, it'll bench them, but they'll be recovered after 1 day. However, if they come into pinch hit when they're tired, then it may take them 2 days to recover. So that's why I take that one off. And as I said, with your starting pitchers, go through, just open one of them up, doesn't matter which one, and go to their strategy and click that little aggressive tired hook. So Caldwell is a starter. Carpenter is a starter. Dutch is my other starter. Boom. Submit. The other basic one that I like to do is any pitchers with high control in the blue. So Chris Carpenter, I like to crank their pitch around because they can pinpoint their pitches a little bit better. They have good control. I want them to paint the corners a little bit more. So I do that with any pitcher that has control over 100. So let's go and do that. The other sliders we'll talk about in a future tutorial video, but those are kind of the basics there for you. Tewksbury, we can crank him all the way up, and otherwise we're good. And finally, your speed guys, if you have any guys with really outstanding speed, I think Craig Biggio and Hugh Nickel, we're going to go in and we're going to crank their speed up a little bit. Nickel and Biggio, give them a little bit more opportunity to run. So on the overall strategy, turn that all the way down. But if you have some good base runners, feel free to go into their individual player strategy and crank them up a little bit. All right, that is going to do it for this video. I hope it helped. I hope you got some information there that helps you with your draft. Again, always look at the era. Go to the baseball reference site and take a look at what the strengths and weaknesses of that specific year are for your players and the ballpark. Make sure you are focusing on how you can utilize to your advantage those ballpark factors. Are you looking for BABIP players like we were in 1919? Or are you looking for home run hitters like we were in the 1965 draft? Again, enter the contest. Please leave a like, share, subscribe, ring that bell for future notifications. And I always love comments. If you guys can leave a comment, tell me something useful you found in the video or a future video that you would like me to see me do in terms of helping you understand the game a little bit better. Next video will be in about a week's time, and we are going to focus on the sliders and how you can kind of tweak those when you're playing tournaments. Thanks again for watching. Here are some other videos that you might find helpful or entertaining. Laptop Pound signing off. We're here for a good time, not a long time. So have a good time. The sun can't shine every day. We'll see you next episode. Not a long time. So have a good time. The sun can't shine every day. And the sun is shining in this rainy city. And the sun is shining